Well, hello and welcome to our Beaumont CEO Spotlight Series. I'm Emma Rhoades, Executive Recruiter here with Beaumont People. And with me today is my very special guest, Ben Cox. Ben is the CEO of the Gold Coast Hospital Foundation. Ben, thank you so much for being here with me today.
My pleasure, Emma. Great to be here and to share with your listeners a little bit about what we do.
Fabulous to have you here. Now, this Spotlight series is really what it's about. It's conversation, interview. Let's talk about who you are as a leader. Let's talk about what you currently do. Obviously, talk a little bit about the work that the Gold Coast Hospital Foundation does. But let's delve a little bit into kind of who you are and how you like to lead. And let's see if we can get some good insights from people out there who are listening to this series. So can you tell us a little bit about your career path and then finish on, how the work you kind of do here at the Gold Coast Hospital Foundation. How did you get to where you are, Ben?
Yeah, how did I get to where I was? I probably started my career like most people start their career with, I don't know what I'm going to do. As someone who grew up in a small country town, had experienced a little bit of tragedy early in my life, having lost my parents, both to cancer at a very, very young age. I think I knew, even as I went to university, that what I wanted to do was something that had a profound effect on others and enabled them to make a difference in the world, as so many people in my life, both professionally and personally, had made a difference when they reached out to help me through some troubling times. And what it saw me go is leave that great adventure of university as a Bachelor of Arts major in English and communications to actually get an opportunity to work in the not-for-profit space, particularly in fundraising, engagement and communications. That first gig I was given was an opportunity to design, critique, and best transform direct marketing campaigns. So that old school notion of sending letters out into people's mailboxes, really trying to convince them to make gifts to organizations. And what it really taught me was that the way you can make a difference in the world isn't always based around having a scalpel in your hand and performing open heart surgery. It isn't always just about being the vet out there who saves animals or the engineer who designs clean drinking water apparatuses. And there is a great responsibility for many of us to be able to ask others to support causes, missions, and organizations through that wonderful power of giving. The way I like to describe it is that responsibility as a fundraiser where we enable others to change the world who otherwise are powerless to do so. So that for me was a great opportunity to learn the fundamentals of why people give, what they're passionate about, how data and amazing storytelling can transform people's lives, not only the beneficiaries of the charities you represent, but those individuals who give. And that journey, Emma, was one that was really quite different. I worked in a charity that supported veterans and their families, doing direct mail campaigns, moving into en masse national large-based community fundraising activations and events. Then had an opportunity to join the fantastic team at what was then known the Royal Children's Hospital Foundation, where I really learnt that power and that passion that making a difference in the lives of kids can have as you set people up in that journey. And that was really a role that was about building relationships with high net worth individuals, with corporate organizations, better understanding what's important to them and how they can have a difference on kids' lives and we can transform their business or their giving. And it was really with that grassroots founding level I was able to move through director of fundraising and marketing roles. I was afforded phenomenal opportunities to be able to contribute to the future of organizations in board roles as well, as organizations were looking for fundraising and marketing professionals to shape good governance and good strategy, not just accounting and legal expertise. And it's really that acted the trigger for me to go and reflect on a career where I had been able to design fantastic engagement programs, raise hundreds of millions of dollars, transform people's lives, shape good governance and build good strategy, where it really identified that probably the next best step for me was about taking on board the responsibility to serve the mission of an organization through being a CEO. And as soon as that was in my sights, it was, how do I best do that? What are the boards that I want to work with? What does the team look like? What are the cultural sets that not only attracts me, but also that my skill set could add value to? And coming into the role as the CEO of the Gold Coast Hospital Foundation has really been one where it's redefined what my leadership style has been and has become. I think often we look at the width and breadth of our career and often define a point in our career where we go, this is the leader I'm going to be and I will never change. But what being in this role has helped me understand is that really effective leadership, and the leadership that I adhere to, is one where first and foremost we are servants to the mission. We are not about our own ego. We're not about our title, our pay packets. But at the core, I exist to serve the Gold Coast Hospital Foundation and make sure anyone who comes to their hospitals, no matter where they live, how much money they have or don't have, whether they're in the most exclusive address or whether they have the most exclusive a car or not, that they have a fighting chance at life when they get here. And that for me has affected my style. My style has been one where I look for strength in vulnerability. That because many of us have stories where we have baggage, where we have traumas, where we have things that we try and cover up and add complex layers on, to me, it's about unpacking that in a team and encouraging that your background, your suffering, the things that haven't worked for you in life and the things that have may make you vulnerable, but they're things we should embrace because they can give you a unique skill set around being able to persevere, not resilience, but perseverance, to persevere through great organisation challenges, through things like COVID, through working with challenging individuals. You have a phenomenal sense of perseverance and ability to persevere. For me, it's also been becoming a leader that is about empowering others to be the best versions of themselves, not to be the best deliverers of what we need, to be the best versions of themselves. And that can often sound counterintuitive, but when we have someone coming to hospital in the toughest point of their life and we need $1 million for an amazing piece of technology to make that fight easier or to make that fight actually happen and prevent that person from suffering tragedy, I don't need people to deliver the outcome for the organisation. I need them to be the best versions of themselves, whatever the challenges we throw at them. And to me, that is about how we best invest in them and being a leader who is less about authority and more a leader who is more about coaching, support, accountability, and building those really successful frameworks that we all can then hold each other accountable to, that one purpose in our organisation, that powerful why, which for us is about giving everyone a fighting chance at life.
So much goodness in that, Ben. Thank you for sharing about you. I want to pick up on the piece where you talk about I think you're combining the people, their best versions of themselves, and also that ability to use those as strengths, because that brings an entirely new layer of perspective, of life experiences, of ability to see different sides to any kind of situation that they find themselves in, which obviously for you is crucial in the team that you're building and the people that you work with.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And part of that is often not about the conversations you have with people. It's how you create the environment by which they operate in. And it can be things as simple and as straightforward as creating a safe and supported environment where they have the confidence to have challenging conversations, where they can hold each other accountable, where they feel like they can come in at the CEO at any time and talk about those challenges. But also it's about shifting that around. And often I see creating the best versions of yourselves is about where you don't get focused on problem definition, you get focused on delivering solutions. And that has been a dynamic shift we've had to make, where by the very nature of how not-for-profits exist, we often become very, very good at identifying problems in society, be it, wait lines in hospital, be it piece of equipment that we need. We do that with all different organisations, but part of encouraging that best version of yourself is not getting caught up in the negativity of, I need to define a problem over and over again, and more so, let's collaborate on how we can actually deliver a solution and not spend a lot of time on problem definition, but empower you to go, well, I've got a solution to that. Then how do I resource that? How do you help me get there? Well, that's an awesome thing to talk about. And so it's the framework around that that a person can come out and be the best versions of themselves, rather than always focusing on, I need to constantly talk to you, I need to coach you, because you can build a really unhealthy codependence in that space as well. So that's an often juggling act. And I think one of the best teachers of that, and I'm going to apologize people because they're going to grimace about that, is watch a season of Ted Lasso. To me, he is redefining the playbook of how you allow people to be vulnerable, how you encourage them to be the best versions of themselves. And it's often not about the conversations you have, it's the environment you create so they can be that.
And so following on from that, what kind of environment have you created for your team?
Very good question. I mean, I like to look at the model of storming, forming, norming, and performing. Yeah. But sometimes you've got to throw that out. So what we have tried to do here at the Gold Coast Hospital Foundation is create an environment where collaboration is not frowned upon. And that may sound unusual, but oftentimes in organisations, collaboration is frowned upon because you set very strict KPIs and parameters for people going, you're an expert in HR, therefore these are your KPIs. You're an expert in finance, these are your KPIs. And so what we've tried to do is break that down and actually have KPIs that are relevant to their roles, but more so put more meaning and structure around KPIs that are based around values. So everyone has mandatory KPIs that are based around the values. How are you going to do that for the next 12 months? How are you going to show respect? How are you going to put community first? How are you and we're going to measure that, and we're going to talk about it. And more so, we're going to celebrate it when you get it right, because people then start to proactively look for not only how do I just make a budget or how do I do the job that's in my PD, but how do I go beyond that? So you start to put measures and frameworks that support that rather than discourage that. And silo-based engagement, particularly in fundraising, is a really challenging one. It can be, for those people out there working in sales, can be the same thing. I sell mobile phone plans. This person sells mobile phones, and never shall the two meet. And if your KPIs reflect that, then it doesn't create an environment. For us, it's about breaking things down, going, there is one KPI, and that's how we achieve our total target. And everyone is a part of that, because we don't want you to step on each other's toes and be afraid to. We want you to step on each other's toes. We want you to find those opportunities. So we try and take the blinkers off by having the structures that support integration and collaboration rather than hinder it. Part of that is also about how we've invested in creating safe working environments, and that's an ongoing thing. You know, people might look at us and go, it must be the most safe and supported and fantastic environment. We have clashes just like everyone else. We work with human beings and we face immense challenges. But what we try and do is create an environment where you can have a challenging conversation by investing in the staff, in team building days, in training around how to have difficult conversations, in investment in how we create collaborative cultures. We're constantly investing in that. The other thing we do, Emma, is not make those things about management and leadership defining that. We try to empower others to step up and lead and others to step back and follow, regardless of the position you have in the organisation. We really try to adopt that NASA rule that when something's wrong with the engines on the rocket ship, you don't go to the flight director because he or she didn't design the engines. You go all the way down the chain to the engineer who designed those engines, and it's their time to shine and their time to lead. So we try to really adopt that. You know, through the audit process, I don't lead the audit. It's our finance person who's on the cold face of that. The community fundraising coordinator is my boss for the month of September as we do Scrub Up September. You know, I report to her, tell me what you need me to do. How do I support that framework? We make it safe for people to rise up and lead rather than pushing that down through the often unnatural chain of command that often organisations and hierarchies have.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, because here at Beaumont, we've actually just started the same kind of concept through a improvement and innovation committee, and there it is opportunities for leadership from through the organisation. So it's not led by our senior management team; it's led by all of us, wherever we're at, whatever role we play. We have an opportunity to be a part of this, and to have that say of how we get best practice, how we move forward, how we innovate, how we improve what we're doing. And it's really exciting initiative, and I'm actually very honoured to be chairing that one for the next couple of years, which is really good. So I hear what you're saying there. It is about providing those opportunities for people to step outside their normal everyday roles and have that ability to lead, to have a say, to make an impact. Because what we're seeing here every day is people are leaving roles and they're talking to us because they want to make that impact. They want to have that ability somewhere, somehow. It doesn't need to be, hierarchical. It doesn't need to be moving up into a promotion. It's just that ability to know that they make a difference, right? That they value, that they matter, that the work they do has an impact at all different levels. So I think that's fabulous the way you do that. And I want to touch on the piece around values, because as a leader, I know that you're very values driven. We obviously had a chat about that, as am I. When you introduced that as part of that KPI system, was that challenging for some people to grasp? And how did they then understand, or how did you lead them through the process of understanding their own values, how to uncover that? Because, you can make that really convoluted process, or you can make it really simple. How did you approach it?
It was really interesting when we looked at that. It was one of the first things I did when I came to the organisation, which was re-engage and reconnect with our purpose or our why, and redefine and refocus in on what our values were. And we could see very quickly that the values we previously had weren't values. They were objectives. We were trying to achieve that. Where values, you don't try to achieve, you live and breathe them. And when we adopted the new set of values, there was a risk that they either get pushed down from management or pushed across from the board, or we spend such a convoluted process designing them all together that they don't mean anything to anyone, because we're trying to tick everyone's boxes. So we formed a middle ground where we actually, in some ways controversially, but we thought it was a great alignment, we adopted the values of the hospital that we fundraise for. And what we then did was bring those values across, and we did this full day exercise where we litmus test those values against, were they actually our values? And the aim of that exercise was to redefine what they were for us. And the most critical part of that was really understanding language. And one of those values is respect, and everyone has the respect value. But we did an exercise where everyone went away and they wrote down what they thought respect was, and they came back. The terrifying part was, of all my team, no one had the same definition of respect. Now, what that showed is, you look at your personal life, your traumas, your successes, your failures, your religion, your background, your ethnicity, and you form a personal value set. And then when you come to look at what respect means in an organisation, you redefine that and you reinterpret that. And the problem is you then hold others accountable and yourself accountable to a definition of a value that they mightn't share the whole definition. An example of that would be one of our leaders in the organisation defined respect as, you respect my position and the title that I hold. Another person defined respect as going, you don't hold me accountable to my title, you hold me accountable to the outcomes and the impact. That is how I would define how you respect me, that it's not about my role, you treat me just like everyone else. So we had two misalignments there, and we could see that there were going to be clashes. And so what we had to do was not necessarily define it in a way that was universal to everyone, but actually acknowledge that how we define what respect in this example is to us is going to be different, but encouraging people to have the conversation when they see someone not uphold the values, when that comes to the KPI setting, to go, okay, let's define what that is for you, and let's have that conversation and put some parameters around it. And what we could then work on is the strengths and the areas of development for people in that KPI process. So it became less about, I'm trying to set you up to fail because you don't respect others, whatever the interpretation of that respect is, and more so go, how do you think you could best display respect in the office and in the workplace and with our donors and our supporters that you probably think you aren't currently doing? What's the extra layer we could put on there to make you really good at this, to really extra special? So it was about redefining what that is and helping people understand their definitions are going to be different, but celebrating that it's different, but giving people awareness of that. And then having those KPIs where it's not about you're going to get in trouble because you don't do this, but more so, how do we take you from good to great? How do we take this level of respect up? And how is that relevant to being a professional fundraising person? How is this relevant to being a marketing professional, to being an admin and data professional? So we're really able to celebrate these as KPIs rather than create a negative working environment that it's an area where you'll be held to fault rather than an area to celebrate. And that was really key to making sure that it worked, defining it, celebrating it, and making the values relevant to your position, not just to the wider organisation.
And did you get much pushback from people who didn't agree with that was the way to go, and they were really very much wanted their own KPIs the way it's always been?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. We had those who would go, how can I measure success if this is an arbitrary assessment of values? And what was really interesting having that conversation was understanding what people defined as success. And when you look at people who are very financial driven, it was about reaching financial KPIs. But when we looked at how we best delivered growth, we could see that people were going to flatline in delivering growth because they didn't have a growth mindset. They weren't taking things from a values-based approach. So what we're able to do is look at this as how do we add a tool to your toolkit that's going to give you success against your other KPIs. So we try not to isolate these in a vacuum, but to more so look at how this will make your other areas more successful because you are doing it. A classic one around our community first value was, well, if we went out and started to take sponsorship money from cigarette companies, given we're working for a hospital and we do great things with people with supporting people with cancer, we wouldn't be putting the community first. But it'd achieve a KPI. So how do we hold each other accountable to that? Well, our values can do that, and they're written down and they're articulated, and they're there to support you to make really smart decisions.
Yeah, so good. That's fabulous. Can you tell me a bit about what you believe are good leadership characteristics?
Yeah, so good leadership characteristics. One for me is about empowerment. I think a good leader focuses on how to empower others with no fear of ego, no fear of position, no fear of a hierarchical creep, if you will, but focuses on how they empower others and how they empower themselves. Often I see leaders, or have worked with leaders who I've sometimes struggled with, who will do their very best to empower you, but they don't actually focus on empowering themselves to be able to support you in the best space, to do the training necessarily for them to make agile decisions. And for me, a good leader focuses on empowerment of others and empowerment of themselves. And again, that's not about power, it's about empowerment. I think a good leader has characteristics that embraces vulnerability. And I've talked about that time and time again in this catch up, but in other forums as well. I think leaders that shun those people who have difficult backgrounds, who discourage emotion in the workplace, who look at vulnerability as a weakness that we just need to harden up, are not leaders who are embracing potentials, people in organizations that could transform it. Not-for-profit is filled with highly vulnerable individuals, not from a sense of exploitation, but more from a sense of they are values driven. They have immense strength. They have fantastic perseverance, and good leaders embrace that. I think the other good characteristic that leaders have is an ability to self-reflect and to action on that self-reflection. One of the key things for me coming into a CEO role was I probably over self-reflected and over-analysed situations without looking at them and going, what can I do different? How can I approach this from a different way? Is it something that I shouldn't adapt and change? How does this set against my value set? I wasn't asking the follow-up question of why am I self-reflecting and what can I do differently next time? So that's self-reflection, but being able to action self-reflection as a characteristic becomes immensely important. Some might label that as emotional intelligence. To me, that's not what emotional intelligence is, but self-reflecting and being able to put into action methods of change and adopting that growth mindset become really, really important. I think the other characteristics that are very important, I think, for modern leaders and future leaders is the ability to move quickly on from problem definition and focus on delivering solutions and delivering outcomes, not impact. We see it particularly in the not-for-profit that we get fascinated by inputs and we get fascinated by defining problems differently so we can understand it. But redefining a problem of how we find a cure for cancer isn't going to get us there quicker. But focusing on outcomes, focusing on impact, and focusing on how we design fantastic solutions, to me, are characteristics of leadership that will have you in a role for the rest of your existence. And the other area I would say that to me is really, really important for leadership is being a servant leader. And I know that was a buzz style of leadership a few years ago, but stripping aside all the analysis around it is whether you're in a for-profit or a not-for-profit, we are there to serve an outcome for an organization. And the moment we start to move away from that, it's the moment we're on the journey to not being relevant in your organization. The moment I stop focusing on every decision that could be checked against, am I giving someone who comes to us a fighting chance at life? It means I shouldn't be focusing on that decision. It means I shouldn't be putting my efforts there. And to me, it's that one characteristic that allows you to be agile. It allows you to make hard decisions. It allows you the freedom to invest in time to explore ideas and collaborations and innovations because you're measuring it against that one thing. Am I serving the mission by doing this? So to me, that is particularly critical in not-for-profits, but I think it's highly relevant in for-profit organisations as a characteristic of leadership as well.
Yeah, it's pretty much likened to leaving your ego at the door, because there's, our ego serves us at some points, but a lot of the time when it comes to leadership, it can detract from this ability to see things differently and to be open-minded and to have that collaboration and ultimately have that, I guess, servant attitude of how can I help you? How can we do this? How can we serve this mission, the cause, whatever it is that we're aiming for, which is fabulous. It's a great way to be. It's one of the I guess, the leadership traits that I see in people through my background of executive coaching gets a lot of outcomes and actually develops those relationships and those abilities to, I guess, to think differently, to be a bit more innovative as well when when it's not just you, when you are inviting others in that process with you.
And I think it's a great thing to ask when you're in that interview process, when you're exploring careers and employers, to ask that question more. Yes, I've read the PD. Yes, I have, this role has these KPIs. Yes, we've got to perform against the strategic plan. But how best do you think this position serves the mission of the organisation? And it's okay if they haven't thought about it, but if they are willing to think about it, that's pretty exciting, because it means there's an openness in an organisation and an openness in your boss or your leaders or your board that they want to serve that and they want you to be a part of that. And to me, that means values are important. They mightn't articulate them, but values are important. It means they're willing to grow, they're willing to adapt to get to that outcome. And who doesn't want to work for or lead an organisation that has those characteristics as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's why we are really big on the meaningful work, and we have our very own meaningful work tool, because it comes down to asking those questions about what is actually important to you, rather than the job title, rather than the salary, rather than any of the other perks and benefits. What's actually important to you inside any kind of organization? And once you know that information, you can start being intentional about seeking it out. It forms the questions that you ask in those interviews, and it forms the applications, of course, that you put forward for the boards that you want to go and apply for, all of that type of work. And I guess that also comes under that self-reflecting piece that you spoke about. As being a great leader is being able to understand and self-analyze, but then also take action on that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe a couple, second last question. Ben, what are you most proud of in your career?
What am I most proud of? There's probably two things I'm most proud of. The first is I've never, ever in an organisation failed to be able to deliver on mission. That is what I'm most proud of, whether it has been keeping a promise to the 34,000 families of veterans in Australia, giving every sick kid a right to life, making sure everyone with cerebral palsy and MS could live the life they choose, whether it is giving Gold Coasters a fighting chance at life. However we have gotten there, we have never, and I have never, failed to deliver on that. The other thing I am most proud of in my career, and this one might seem a little bit strange, is when people leave organisations when I'm their leader. Now, this is not about people leaving because they've had a bad time, but one of the proudest moments for me when I'm a leader in an organisation is when I have led, when I have empowered, when I have served someone and they're taking the next big step in their career. It is moments that I'm incredibly proud of because it means we have invested in a person and they are going to go somewhere else and deliver fantastic outcomes and fantastic change. It's one of the greatest privileges I think we should have and we should appreciate as leaders, that when we get it right, when we serve our mission, when we invest in others, when we display those characteristics that we all value and we hold each other accountable and support our values, when people leave because they're going to become a CEO or a head of a department or head up their own team or start their own consultancy, and they're doing it because you've invested in them, that is an immensely powerful moment. And to me, it's probably the biggest tick that you can have, that you've been successful as a leader in an organization. And it means someone else is going to serve a mission that I just reflected on as my proudest moments somewhere else. So you've been a part of that. It's like a bad analogy, but it's like a virus spreading and spreading. It's like a rippling out and out and out. More and more people are going to do more and more good. And why shouldn't we celebrate that? We should be so proud of that. And they're those proud moments when I can absolutely achieve mission and when I can absolutely deliver on getting people into those right roles because I have invested in them.
So good. That's fabulous, inspirational. And I think that really comes down to the impact that you make, really, because that's an impact that you've had on someone that they will take for the rest of their life. And you're absolutely right. It does form ripple effects because they'll remember this time where they had this amazing leader who did everything that you've just spoken about. And then that becomes the leader that they want to be as well. And so that is how we make that change, through one leader at a time. So Ben, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of these wonderful insights with everybody, for taking the time to chat and be open and share, your beliefs and your values and how you like to lead as well. Can I ask you to leave us with any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? I would say, and I share this because I met a young and inspiring individual who has had some challenges and faced some challenges in their life. And they talked to me and said, because I've had those challenges, I've lacked the confidence to take on those leadership roles in organizations, even though I've been tapped on the shoulder for them. And the final thought I leave you with is a reflection that I had with this person to say, don't sell yourself short. Don't hold yourself back from great success and an opportunity to profoundly change people because you don't think you can do it because you've faced challenges in life. I would challenge you and I would empower you to go, that's what's going to make you exceptionally good at it. That's what's going to make you great, is looking at the things you've done right and the things you've done wrong and being able to become a good leader, not in spite of those things, but because of the learnings you've had. So I'd really offer that challenge out there to go, anyone who's a bit trepidatious about that, who might be looking at how do I do this? What's the next step I take? just do it. The worst thing you can do is learn. The worst thing you can do is to learn to be better at it. But yeah, that's what I would leave you with as my final thought.
That's fabulous. Just do it. Back yourself, go for it, because the worst thing you can do is learn. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate your time here with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Emma.